The funeral ends at dusk. Voices fade into car engines, then silence. You stand in the doorway, watching taillights disappear down the gravel road, and someone's hand touches your shoulder. "You're so strong," they say, "so brave." You nod. You smile a small, tired smile. You close the door. Inside, the house feels like a museum. Flowers wilt on the kitchen table. Dishes stack in the sink. The air smells of coffee gone cold, and something else you cannot name. You move through rooms, picking up cups, folding chairs, wiping surfaces clean. Your hands know what to do. They have always known. While others wept into tissues, you poured water into glasses. While others collapsed into embraces, you answered phone calls and made arrangements and wrote down names for thank you cards you will send next week. You are the one who holds things together. You always have been. But now the house is empty. Now there is no one left to be strong for. You sit on the edge of your bed in the dark and try to cry. You think you should cry. You want to cry. Something heavy presses against your chest, but no tears come. You breathe in slowly, out slowly. Your face remains dry. Your eyes feel like stones behind your eyelids. You do not feel sad. You do not feel anything at all. You feel only the weight, the thickness, the stillness. Numbness settles over you like fog over frozen ground. This is not new. You have been here before, many times. In other rooms, other nights, other losses. When the world expected you to break, you stood firm. When chaos swirled around you, you became the center, the axis, the unmoved mover. People leaned on you because you did not bend. They called you resilient. They called you a rock, and you learned to wear that name like armor. But here is what no one tells you about becoming stone. Stone does not feel the rain. Stone does not feel the sun. Stone stands in the garden for decades, weathering every storm, and knows nothing of the warmth that reaches down through soil to wake the roots of flowers. You were not born this way. You were not born hard and smooth and cold to the touch. Once you were soft, once you cried easily and laughed without guarding the sound. But somewhere along the way, someone taught you that softness was dangerous, that tears were weakness, that to survive you had to build walls so high and thick that nothing could reach the tender places inside. So you built them, and now those walls are crushing you. The world loves strength. It celebrates those who do not flinch, who do not falter, who carry weight without complaint. Society builds monuments to endurance. It writes songs about warriors who never bleed. And when it finds someone like you, someone who appears unbreakable, it exhales in relief. Finally, someone who will not need tending. Finally, someone who can bear it. But no one asks what it costs you. They see the armor and assume you feel nothing beneath it. They see you standing and assume you are not tired. Because you do not cry, they believe you do not hurt. Because you do not ask for help, they believe you do not need it. The stronger you appear, the more invisible your pain becomes. And so the weight accumulates, quietly, relentlessly. Every burden that others cannot carry finds its way to your shoulders. Every crisis that makes others panic becomes your responsibility to solve. You become the default, the one who handles things, the one who always knows what to do. Not because you want to be, but because you have shown them that you can be. You are exhausted not because the weight is unbearable, but because you have been holding it up for so long without ever setting it down. Not even for a moment, not even to breathe. And beneath the exhaustion lies something darker, something you rarely name aloud: loneliness. The particular loneliness of the invulnerable, the unreachable, the one who stands on the other side of glass. You are surrounded by people, and yet you are utterly alone. You sit in crowded rooms and feel like you are watching from a great distance, separated by something you cannot cross. Because connection requires vulnerability. To be known, you must be seen. And to be seen, you must allow someone to witness the parts of you that are not strong, not composed, not in control. But you learned long ago to hide those parts. You learned to keep your weaknesses locked away, where no one could use them against you, where no one could see them and turn away, so you remain safe, untouchable, protected behind your walls. But safety, you are beginning to understand, is not the same as belonging. Safety is the absence of threat. Belonging is the presence of connection. And you cannot have both. You cannot be invulnerable and intimate at the same time. The armor that keeps danger out also keeps love at arm's length. People think they know you. They see your calm exterior, your measured words, your steady hands. They believe they understand what you are, but they know only the surface. They know the role you play, the function you perform. They have never met the person beneath the stone, and neither perhaps have you. Because when you spend years learning not to feel, you forget what feelings are called. When you spend years swallowing pain, you lose the ability to distinguish between sadness and hunger, between anger and exhaustion, between grief and the dull ache in your chest that you assume is just how bodies feel after a certain age. You have become fluent in a language that does not have words for what you are. Strong, fine, okay. These are the only words available to you now. Everything else has been edited out. Everything else has been deemed too dangerous to speak. The stone did not appear overnight. It was built layer by layer in response to lessons you learned before you had words for them. Lessons that carved themselves into your nervous system, into the way your body moves through the world, into the way you breathe or do not breathe when emotion rises in your throat. The first lesson came early. You were small, perhaps 5 or 6. You fell and scraped your knee, and the pain was bright and immediate. Tears came hot and fast. You ran inside, seeking comfort, seeking the soft place you thought would catch you. But instead of arms opening, a voice cut through the air. Stop that crying right now. The words were sharp, impatient. You're fine. It's just a scratch. Big kids don't cry over nothing. You tried to explain that it hurt, but the tears only made the voice harder. I said, stop. What will people think? You want them to see you acting like a baby. Shame flooded through you hotter than the pain in your knee. You swallowed the next sob. You held your breath until the crying stopped. And when it stopped, the voice softened. There, see, you're tougher than you thought. In that moment, your young mind made a connection. Crying equals punishment. Crying equals shame. Crying equals being too much, too weak, too embarrassing to love. But stopping the crying, pushing it down, holding it in, that brings approval. That brings relief. That makes you good. So you learned to bite your lip until it bled. You learned to excuse yourself to the bathroom and splash cold water on your face until the redness faded. You learned to translate pain into silence, to convert hurt into a blank expression, to transform fear into a shrug, and the words, I'm fine. And your body learned too. Your nervous system began to sever the pathway between feeling and expression. The signal would arrive, sadness, fear, anger, but somewhere between your heart and your face, it would be intercepted, rerouted, shut down. You developed what psychologists call dissociation, the art of disconnecting from your own experience of watching your life from behind a pane of glass. But the lessons did not end there. There were other lessons, quieter and more insidious. You learned that your parents could not hold your pain because they were drowning in their own. Your mother's hands trembled when she was anxious, which was often. Your father withdrew into long silences that filled the house like cold water. When you brought them your worries, your fears, your small childhood catastrophes, you watched them crumble. Your mother's eyes would fill with panic. Your father would leave the room, so you stopped bringing them anything. You became the calm one, the easy one, the child who did not need anything. You learned to sense the fragility in the air and adjust yourself accordingly. When your mother seemed close to breaking, you made yourself small and quiet and helpful. When your father's silence grew too heavy, you carried the conversation, filled the emptiness with bright chatter about nothing that mattered. You became the container, the one who held everyone else's emotions because they could not hold their own. You became the parent to your parents, offering them the stability they could not offer you. And somewhere in that reversal, you absorbed a belief that would shape everything that followed. The belief that if you let yourself feel, if you let yourself need, if you let yourself break, the whole structure will collapse. Your family, your life, everything. So you held yourself together. You had to. There was no choice. Survival demanded it. Years passed. The habit deepened. You forgot there had ever been another way. The armor became your skin, and your body, denied the release that tears provide, began to speak in a different language. The language of symptoms. Your stomach clenches before meetings. Your jaw aches from grinding your teeth at night. Your shoulders carry permanent knots of tension that no massage can fully unravel. Headaches arrive without warning and last for days. Your throat tightens when you try to speak about anything that matters. Sometimes your heart races for no reason you can name, and you sit very still, waiting for it to slow, wondering if this is panic or something worse, something medical, something that can be fixed with pills or procedures. The doctors find nothing wrong. Your tests come back normal. They suggest stress. They suggest therapy. You nod politely and leave with a prescription you may or may not fill. Because you do not feel stressed. You do not feel anything. You feel only these physical sensations that seem to arrive from nowhere, unconnected to any emotion, any thought, any event. This is what happens when you become fluent in denial. Your conscious mind stops recognizing emotion entirely. Sadness does not feel like sadness. It feels like fatigue, like heaviness in your limbs, like wanting to sleep for days. Anger does not feel like anger. It feels like a tightness in your chest, like irritation at small things, like snapping at people for reasons you cannot explain. Fear does not feel like fear. It feels like restlessness, like an itch under your skin, like needing to move to check things, to control every variable. The medical term for this is alexithymia, emotional blindness, the inability to identify and describe feelings. But it is not truly blindness. The feelings are there. They simply no longer have names. They have been translated into the body's vocabulary, spoken through muscles and organs and nerves. Your body is screaming what your mouth is not allowed to say, and still you push forward, still you function. Still, you meet every demand placed upon you with the same steady competence, because you have learned that perfection is your only defense. That any crack in the facade, any moment of weakness, any failure to perform will be the opening through which disaster enters. You control everything you can control. Your schedule managed down to the minute. Your environment kept clean and ordered. Your appearance carefully maintained. Your work executed flawlessly. Your relationships kept at precisely the right distance, close enough to avoid loneliness, far enough to avoid vulnerability. You have contingency plans for your contingency plans. You run scenarios in your mind, constantly preparing for every possible catastrophe, every potential loss, every way things could go wrong. This is survivor's perfectionism. The belief that if you just try hard enough, work hard enough, stay vigilant enough, you can prevent pain. You can control the uncontrollable. You can protect yourself and everyone around you from harm. It is exhausting. It is impossible, and yet you cannot stop, because the alternative, accepting that life is unpredictable, that pain is inevitable, that some things cannot be controlled, no matter how hard you try, feels like standing at the edge of an abyss. So, you grip tighter, you work harder, you build the walls higher, and the irony is that the armor meant to protect you has become your prison. The strength meant to help you survive is now preventing you from living. You have forgotten that strength comes in different forms. You have confused rigidity with resilience. An oak tree is strong, yes, solid and unmovable. But when the storm comes, the oak snaps. It cannot bend. Its roots go deep, but its trunk is inflexible. The wind breaks it in half. Meanwhile, the bamboo bends almost to the ground. It looks fragile, looks like it will surely snap. But when the storm passes, it springs back upright. It survives not through hardness, but through flexibility. Not through resistance, but through yielding. You have made yourself into oak when you needed to be bamboo. You have taught yourself to stand firm when you needed to learn to sway. And now when life demands flexibility, when connection requires vulnerability, when healing requires the ability to break open, you find yourself locked in place, rigid, brittle, strong in all the wrong ways. The people around you speak languages you do not understand. They cry easily, they admit weakness, they ask for help without shame. They share their fears and doubts and failures as casually as sharing what they ate for breakfast. You watch them the way an anthropologist watches a foreign culture, fascinated and bewildered. How do they do it? How do they make themselves so vulnerable and still survive? Do they not know how dangerous it is? Do they not understand that openness is an invitation to be hurt? But then you notice something else. You notice that when they cry, others move toward them, not away. You notice that when they admit they are struggling, hands reach out to steady them. You notice that their vulnerability does not drive people away. It draws people closer. It creates the intimacy you have been craving your entire life and have never known how to find. And something deep inside you, something beneath the stone, begins to wonder, begins to question, begins to ache with a longing you cannot name. There is a word you have carried like a medal your entire life: strong. It has defined you, shaped you, given you identity and purpose. But now, standing in the wreckage of your own defenses, you begin to wonder if you have been using the wrong word all along. If what you called strength was actually something else entirely. True strength is not the absence of breaking. It is the capacity to break and reform, to shatter and gather the pieces and build something new from the fragments. The Japanese have a practice called kintsugi, the art of repairing broken pottery with gold. The cracks are not hidden, but highlighted, made beautiful, transformed into the most valuable part of the object. The bowl that has broken and been repaired is considered more precious than one that has never been damaged, because it has a history, because it has survived, because its wounds have become wisdom. But you were taught to hide the cracks, to pretend they do not exist, to present an unbroken surface to the world no matter what lies beneath. You were taught that any visible damage makes you worthless, that any admission of pain makes you weak, that any request for help makes you a burden. So you glued yourself back together in secret and hoped no one would look too closely. This is not strength. This is fragility disguised as fortitude. Real strength has elasticity. It has give. It can absorb impact without shattering because it knows how to bend. The strongest materials in nature are not the hardest. Diamond is hard, but strike it at the right angle and it cleaves in two. Spider silk is soft, but it can stop a bee traveling at full speed without breaking. Flexibility is what makes it strong. You have made yourself diamond when you needed to be silk. You have valued hardness over resilience. And now the small impacts that others absorb easily, a criticism, a disappointment, a loss, hit you with devastating force because you cannot bend. You can only endure or break. There is no middle ground, no capacity for partial yielding. You stand rigid against every blow until one day one blow lands just right and you fracture completely. The people who seem weak to you, the ones who cry easily and admit struggle and ask for help, they are not weak at all. They are practicing a different kind of strength, the strength of honesty, the strength of flexibility, the strength of allowing themselves to be human. They fall apart regularly in small ways, and this protects them from falling apart catastrophically. They release pressure incrementally instead of letting it build until the explosion destroys everything. You thought you were being brave by never showing pain. But Brené Brown, who has spent decades researching vulnerability, says this: vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up when you can't control the outcome. She says that courage and vulnerability are not opposites. They are inseparable. There is no courage without vulnerability. There is no genuine strength without the willingness to be seen in your weakness. The bravest thing you could do right now is not to keep holding everything together. The bravest thing is to say out loud, "I am not okay." To let someone see you trembling, to admit you need help, to cry in front of another human being and trust they will not use your tears against you. This terrifies you more than any physical danger, because you have built your entire identity on not needing anyone, on being the one others need. To reverse that feels like stepping off a cliff into nothing. But what if the nothing is actually something? What if on the other side of that cliff is not destruction but transformation? What if the person you have been, the stone, the pillar, the unmovable force, is not who you were meant to be, but merely who you learned to be in order to survive? And what if survival is no longer enough? What if you are ready finally to do more than survive? What if you are ready to live? This would require a kind of courage you have never practiced. The courage to be soft, the courage to be uncertain, the courage to be imperfect and messy and human, the courage to let the armor fall away and stand in the world with your skin exposed to wind and sun and the possibility of both pain and joy. So how does stone become soft again? How do you reverse years of calcification, decades of holding tight? The answer is both simple and impossibly difficult. Slowly, with patience, with the kind of gentleness you have never shown yourself. You cannot force a thaw. You cannot command your heart to open like you command your body to move through the day. This is work that happens in the margins, in the quiet moments, in the spaces between your armor and your skin. It begins not with grand gestures, but with small permissions. Permission to feel, even if only for a moment. Permission to need, even if only a little. Permission to be something other than strong. Start where it is safest. Start with other people's pain. You cannot cry for yourself, yet cannot access whatever lies frozen beneath your ribs. But you can watch a film about loss and let your eyes blur. You can listen to a sad song and feel something move in your chest. You can read a story about someone else's grief and find your throat tightening. This is proxy mourning. This is your body remembering what it feels like to release, practicing the mechanics of tears without the danger of your own vulnerability. Let it happen. When the sadness comes for a character you will never meet, for a situation that is not yours, do not push it away. Do not tell yourself it is foolish to cry over fiction. Sit with it. Let the tears fall. Your body does not know the difference between real grief and witnessed grief. It only knows the release. It only knows the relief of finally letting something out. And in those moments, pay attention. Notice how your shoulders drop when you cry. Notice how your breathing deepens. Notice how afterward there is a softness in you, a loosening, as if some small knot has been untied. This is what you have been denying yourself. This is what happens when you allow feeling to move through you instead of damming it up inside. Then turn your attention inward, but not to your emotions. Not yet. Start with your body. Because your body has been speaking for years in the language you do understand. The headache, the tight shoulders, the clenched jaw, the churning stomach. These are not random malfunctions. These are messages. When your chest tightens, stop. Do not push through it. Do not ignore it. Sit down and place your hand over your heart and ask it, what are you trying to tell me? The answer may not come in words. It may come as an image, a memory, a color, a name, anxiety, grief, loneliness, anger. Your body knows what your mind has forgotten. You have to learn to listen to it again. There are practices for this. Somatic therapy, trauma release exercises, methods that help the body discharge what it has been holding. Sometimes you shake. Sometimes you cry without knowing why. Sometimes you feel rage surge through your limbs, and you have to move, have to hit a pillow, or run until your legs burn. This is not madness. This is release. This is years of suppressed feeling finally finding a way out. But the body work is only part of the journey. Eventually, you must let another person see you. This is the step that feels impossible. Your entire architecture has been built to prevent this moment, to keep others at the distance where they can admire your strength but never witness your weakness. But connection cannot happen at that distance. Love cannot reach you through walls. So you practice opening. Not all the way. Not yet. Just 5%. You choose someone who has proven themselves safe. Someone who has shown up consistently, someone who does not need you to be strong for them, and you tell them one true thing, something small, something that does not feel catastrophic. Today was hard. That is enough. I am tired. That is enough. I am not okay. Those 4 words are a revolution, and then you wait. You watch their face for judgment, for disappointment, for the pulling away you have always feared, but most of the time what you see instead is softening. Their eyes gentle. They move closer, not farther. They say, thank you for telling me. They say, I'm here. They say, what do you need? And something in you begins to understand that vulnerability does not drive people away. It invites them in. It gives them permission to be human with you instead of having to perform in vulnerability alongside you. Do this again and again. Each time, open 5% more. Build evidence that the world does not punish softness the way you were taught it would. That need does not equal burden. That asking for help does not make you weak. That being seen in your pain does not make you less worthy of love. It makes you more real, more reachable, more human. And then, inevitably, comes the day when you cannot hold it anymore, when the dam breaks, when all the years of accumulated grief and fear and exhaustion come pouring out in one overwhelming flood. This is the breakdown, the collapse. The moment you have been terrified of your entire life, you will feel like you are dying. You will feel like you are losing your mind. You will feel like if you start crying, you will never stop. Let it happen anyway. This is not the end. This is the beginning. This is the old structure crumbling so something new can grow in its place. The phoenix must burn before it can rise. The seed must split open before it can become a tree. You must break before you can heal. Winter ends, not all at once, but slowly the way all true transformations happen. The ice that covered the river for so long begins to soften at the edges. Water moves beneath the frozen surface, patient and persistent. One day a crack appears, then another. The sound of breaking fills the air, and what seems solid and permanent reveals itself to be temporary. The ice was never meant to last forever. It was only meant to protect the water until spring arrived. You are that river. The stone you became was never your true nature. It was a season you had to endure, but seasons change. The thaw is coming. Perhaps it has already begun. You do not have to hold up the sky anymore. The sky will not fall if you lower your arms. The world will not collapse if you rest. The people who truly love you do not need you to be invincible. They need you to be real. They need the person beneath the armor, the one who laughs and cries and admits uncertainty and asks for help and offers the kind of intimacy that only comes from mutual vulnerability. Take off the armor. Not all at once if that feels too dangerous. but piece by piece, plate by plate, until you remember what your skin feels like against the air, until you remember what it is to feel sunlight without barrier, until you remember what it is to be embraced without metal between you and the one who holds you. You were not born stone. You were born soft and open and full of feeling. Somewhere beneath the layers of protection you built, that child still exists, the one who cried easily and loved fearlessly and believed the world was safe enough to be vulnerable in. That child is waiting, not to be saved, but to be remembered, to be welcomed home. The armor protected you when you needed protection. Honor it for that. It kept you alive through years when survival was all you could manage. But you are not just surviving anymore. You are ready for something more. You are ready to feel again, to break again, to be human again. And being human means this: you are allowed to hurt. You are allowed to need. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to cry until the tears run dry and then cry again tomorrow. You are allowed to be weak and uncertain and messy and imperfect. You are allowed to be soft. The river runs again. Listen, can you hear it? That sound is not breaking. That sound is freedom.